Hello and welcome to Thrive in 5. Rabbi spent a lot of time doing stuff that starts with the letter B. Baby namings, bris, bar bat mitzvah, betrothal, and of course, burial. It's a full-service industry from womb to tomb, which is why it's surprising that in this week's Torah reading, Parshas Emor, we learn that the priests, the Kohanim, who were really the rabbis of old, were strictly forbidden from coming in contact with the dead except for a few of their closest relatives. And I think this is a pretty revolutionary concept, certainly back then when the priesthood was largely involved with death. And even today we know that to minister in any faith means to deal with issues of death and dying. The holiday of Shavuos is coming up in a couple of weeks, the day that we received the Torah at Mount Sinai. But what a lot of people don't realize is this is really the 50th day of a long holiday of freedom that began on the first day of Passover. And I think this would be surprising to a lot of Jews because let's face it, most Jews today are not flocking to sign up to keep Shabbos and Kashrut and pray 3 times a day precisely because they would view these things as a limitation, as a restriction on their freedom. And yet the Torah begs to differ. The Torah refers to itself as an It's Hayim, it's a tree of life, it's a book of life because it views itself as really the ultimate guidebook on how to bring out the maximum potential from every human being. And this is really what life is all about, because if you think about the difference between an animate and inanimate object, is that an animate object is constantly on the move. It's growing. It is not today what it was yesterday. Our Torah teaches us that we all have within ourselves powerful, vital force of life and health, a neshama, a soul, that is relentlessly pushing us against the boundaries and limitations of our own lives to achieve the maximum and be the most that we can be. And this is really the ideal that the Torah stands for, and this is what the Kohen, the priest, stood for, and this, I believe, is why he was restricted from coming in contact with the dead, because a dead body is really the most powerful and visceral experience we can have of the ultimate limitation. It's a testimony to the fact that that life force within us was really stopped in its tracks and unable to fulfill itself in the ultimate sense. This is a message that I think is important for us, not just the Kohanim, because it's so easy for us to get caught up in our own sense of limitation and to forget what it is that we have within us, our own capacity. I had a client who had fallen on hard times, and he was really bedridden for a couple of years, but he managed to get himself back, pull himself up by his bootstraps, so to speak, and get himself back into life. And I was impressed, but he was expressing a lot of insecurity about the future, and I had to say to him, who do you think got you where you are today? That was you. That's the health within you that would never let you spend the rest of your life in bed, and you can count on it in the future. It's so easy for us to forget what we have inside of us, our own capacity, not just when it comes to our physical capacity, but our capacity to understand life. And this is a lesson that was driven home to me very powerfully a couple of years ago. When we first trained to be coaches in Living Judaism, we went to a group of therapists up in Connor, Washington, about an hour and a half north of Seattle. And they taught us some principles that I thought were pretty straightforward and simple. And so when my former colleague approached me a while later and offered me an opportunity to go back up and do some more training, my first thought was, I already understand this stuff. It's pretty simple. But it's Laconer. It's a really nice place to go. We stay in the Laconer Inn. There's a fireplace in our room. We hang out with nice people. It's like a paid vacation. So I humored him. 4 days later, I'm driving back to Seattle, and my jaw is on the floor. It was like a trap door had opened. There was a whole new world that I had never seen in these few simple principles. A couple of months later, whatever, he calls me back up and makes the same offer. And me, in my brilliance, the first thought I have is, last time I was mistaken, but this time I got it. I understand this stuff. But it's Laconer. I'll humor him. And needless to say, 4 days later, I'm driving back to Seattle, and the very same experience. I believe there's virtually nothing more important than we can know about ourselves and about every other human being than the fact that we each have within us an incredibly powerful, vital source of life and health. We have a potential that's virtually limitless. We may not understand what we're missing in any given moment. Nobody can know what lies at the end of any journey that they haven't begun. But I think if we at least understand what we're capable of, we'll have the faith and the courage and the hopefulness to get out of our own way and to at least take the first step out the door. Thank you and have a wonderful day.